I am so glad that I read these emails in the morning after I've woken up from a good night's sleep rather than read them in the evenings before going to bed, because I think if I did, there's no way I'd get any sleep. Listen to this and perhaps you'll agree. This is from an email from Shalacy. Shalacy writes, "This is 100% true. So I have lived in East Tennessee my whole life up until about a year ago. And there were some things I saw out in the woods that I'm afraid to even speak of. But for the sake of being aware to never go there again, I will. There was an old graveyard off this back road with an old beat-up, torn-up sign that you could barely read. My friend Aaron and I went down the path to the graveyard. Yes, a path. It wasn't even a dirt road, just leaves. It was Halloween, so we decided, hey, let's go back to that graveyard we found last year to scare ourselves. So Aaron and I went down this path, and you have to cross a stream to even get to the place, so you need a four-wheel drive. About 3/4 of a mile down this path, you finally come to this hill. You have to park and get out and go up the hill to see the graveyard. This graveyard is already creepy enough on its own because the graves all belong to a bunch of dead babies. I think the oldest I found was around 4 years old, but they are also super, super old, from the 1700s or early 1800s. So we went up there, mind you, it's nighttime, and walked around for a bit, and then we got in the Explorer to leave. We drove about halfway out before we got back to the stream, and Aaron said, hey, you want to sit here for a second? So we shut the vehicle off and turned off the headlights and sat there in complete darkness. And I mean darkness. You couldn't see anything other than the little red dot from my phone's charging port. Aaron did this thing where he screamed something out the window. I can't remember exactly what it was, but something along the lines of Guardians of the East, South, North, West, or something. And as soon as he did that, this thing that was about 8 to 10 feet tall popped up at my window and made this super loud noise that I couldn't even describe to this day. It was like a scream, a growl, and a baby crying all at once. And it was so loud because it was right at my window, which was rolled down about 3 inches. We both turned our heads towards my window, and we saw this huge thing that was blacker than black. And I say that because you could see the outline of it in the total darkness of night. It seemed to have these massive wings that, if they were spread, would be no less than 5 to 6 feet. I started freaking out, losing my mind, saying, get me out of here, over and over, because I really thought I was going to die. We started the car up and drove out. Aaron burned some sage over us in our vehicle when we got back, just in case it followed us. But I'm telling you, there is something out there in those woods. We were completely sober, by the way, and I've never seen a single weird paranormal thing like that ever. Shalacy. Shalacy, you're not alone. And I'm sure this was a follow-up to yesterday's video about strange things in the woods. We got a lot of follow-up to that video, and I'm going to share some more with you now. This comes from Patty Lynn 22, who writes, my brother and I were walking in the woods near his home one afternoon. All of a sudden, we heard a screeching noise that felt like our heads would explode. As we walked a little further, we came up on an old-looking wagon, and there were a few men in old-timey clothes standing around the wagon. They were just staring at us. They never said a word. I'm sure they were ghosts because you could kind of see through them. My brother and I looked at each other and took off running. I have never been so scared. It was like we walked into a different era. Nessa Amo 8077 writes, I live on a mountain. I've heard and seen some really unexplainable things. Every night there will be a short, high-pitched howl that happens every 15 to 20 minutes. It's not a coyote or a wolf or a dog. It's very eerie, and the scary part is every time the howl happens, it's in a different direction. It can sound really close or far away in the mountains. I also hear what sounds like something huge is breaking branches off of trees or even taking down trees. I also will sometimes hear these unexplainable galloping noises. It doesn't sound like hooves, it sounds bigger than a bear, but nothing is there. I have trail cameras and it'll take photos of these odd white orbs. I have no idea what all this could be, but it frightens me sometimes. Brenda Levine, 7756 writes, Mr. Lake, and that's me. I prefer the name Kevin, by the way. Mr. Lake, you just read my info to the people, so this must have been about another message or comment that I'd read earlier. I have had one encounter with a dog man when I was 5 years old, a most scary encounter. We have a sleeping porch on the front side of our cabin, which is screened in with double wire. I woke one night to a dog man tearing through the screen wire. I hollered for my dad. He and my grandmother shot poisoned arrows into it. Father's hit through the neck and grandmother's hit through the chest. My grandmother was born in 1870 and my father was born in 1901. My great-grandmother was still alive at the time and she was born in 1840. Amazing. The dog man was around 8 feet tall. Its snout was not as protruded as a dog's. It had very large teeth. It had pinkish skin where it didn't have reddish-brown fur. Very long human hands, human-like build, and nails like a lion. It had blue eyes and human ears, but very pointed, a ripped chest, feet and legs like a dog. Father always left a lantern burning on the porch. This occurred beside my cot. I had a very clear view. Only time I've ever seen one, and I hope I never do again. Growing up, we were told many myths, legends, and stories and fairy tales mixed with truths. It was an easy way to teach and make us kids aware of dangers. It confuses folks. We are close to the Buffalo River here in the Ozarks. It's a floating canoe river now. There are other creatures not talked about much, but when someone tries to tell of their experience or describe a sighting, they are labeled as crazy or told that it didn't occur. As time goes forward, I believe many creatures will be sighted due to humans encroaching into their territories and the need for them to find food. Nellie's Farm 8473 writes, I have a homestead too, in rural northeast Alabama. Bigfoot are definitely here. They look in my windows, walk through the property. So much activity has happened in the last 5 years here that I just ignore it now. I leave fruit out for them. They will eat apples from my trees fresh, but not store-bought apples. They don't bother anything or anyone. It's a dog man you need to fear, not Bigfoot. Rose Matter 5547 writes, I hate dog man. I live in Gatlinburg, Tennessee by the Smoky Mountains National Park. I've seen this thing twice and heard it 3 times. I'd rather see it than hear it. I hate the sound. And now, to quite an incredible email, and the sender wishes to remain anonymous, and as I've mentioned before in these videos, if you have a story that you want out there, that you want told, you can send it to me. You can either leave it as a comment on the channel below a video, or you can email it to me at crazylake@mail.com. And if you wish to remain anonymous, I will not say your name. And that's the case in point with this anonymous sender. Kevin, I will share my story with you, but please keep me anonymous. Even my wife is unaware of the events that took place that I am now going to share with you and your audience. And thank you in advance for giving people like me an outlet to share these unexplainable experiences. If I couldn't come here to your YouTube channel, I would have nowhere else to go. I had been an avid hunter my entire life. My father used to take me hunting beginning around the time I was 10 years old. I'm 50 now, close to your age, I believe, but I've not hunted nor stepped foot into the woods for any reason in nearly 10 years now, and it's because of what happened to me about 10 years ago why I refuse to ever go into the woods again. It was late November, and I was out deer hunting in the National Forest just outside of the small town where I grew up in West Virginia. I'd moved to Ohio just after graduating from college many years before, and I still reside in Ohio, but it had been an annual tradition for me to return to see family in West by God, as those of us who are from there call it, every Thanksgiving, but not just for family and turkey, but also to deer hunt. I'd done this with my dad until he passed away when I was about 30 years old. He'd worked in the mines his whole life and finally succumbed to black lung. Anyway, I was hunting in an area that, by this time, I'd hunted annually for 30 years. I had never been scared or even nervous in the woods for any reason, but on this particular outing, something just felt weird, for the lack of a better word. I didn't have this feeling immediately upon entering the woods, but once I got out as far as I would venture from my vehicle, about 1.5 miles straight up a mountain with no trail, this weird feeling set in. This feeling was so odd that I actually decided to cut my hunt short and go back to my mother's house. When I was about 1/2 mile away from my vehicle, I came upon a small stream that I'd crossed countless times over the previous 30 years. Just before reaching the stream, I noticed something very odd indeed. I was heading due west as the sun was shining in my eyes as it was beginning to set over the beautiful Appalachian Mountains, yet I noticed that my shadow was right in front of me. Kevin, this defies both science and logic. Since the sun was in front of me, my shadow should have been cast behind me, but it wasn't. Also, across the stream, there appeared to be a house that has never been there ever, and it appeared to be encased in fog even though it was a sunny day. I know this sounds crazy, and I knew at the time that I knew exactly where I was, and I should not be seeing a house where a house had never existed, so I continued to proceed. I began walking more slowly, though I did keep moving, and when I reached the stream, the head part of my shadow hit the water, and though I was expecting to see my own reflection, I saw something altogether quite different. Kevin, with God as my witness, and I am a firm believer in God, so I do not say this lightly, I saw the face of a demon reflecting back at me from the water. Instinctively, I took off running. But as I hopped over the stream, what must have been a hand came up out of the water and pulled me into the stream. The stream at this point could not have been more than 1 foot deep at the most, but I was pulled completely under, my entire body as if I were in a 12-foot deep swimming hole. And that's the last thing I remember. Until I came to, sitting in my vehicle with the engine running and the heat on high. Though it was late November, I was not cold. Actually, I was quite hot and I turned off the heat. I had no idea how long I'd been sitting there. I had no injuries after this event, not even the slightest of bruises or scratches. My rifle was in the back seat, unloaded and put away properly in its case. I would provide further details, but I have none. Again, this happened 10 years ago, and I have no more memories of what happened today than I did 10 years ago. It was still light enough to see when I came to in my vehicle. There was probably half an hour of daylight left, and I had been out about 1/2 mile away from my car when this happened. I would estimate around 3:30 in the afternoon, so I probably lost 2 hours of time in my life that until now I cannot account for. Again, Kevin, thank you for providing your channel as an outlet for those of us who have nowhere else to share our stories. FYI, I completely love and trust my wife, but mental illness runs in my family, and there's been times she's worried that myself or our 3 children might be affected. Not because myself or them have ever shown any signs, but because she's a nurse and she has a strong understanding of genetics. The reason I've not told her of my experience is not because I don't trust her, but I do not want to scare her, i.e., by perhaps making her fear even more for me and our children. The thing is, Kevin, I know in my heart of hearts she would believe me, but I love her too much to take the risk. Again, it's why I'm so happy I could come here. Your fellow Appalachian American, Anonymous. So folks, there you have it. Some more amazing stories from you folks. If you have a similar experience or something's happened that you just simply cannot explain, whether you've told others, whether you're willing to share openly, or if you want to share it anonymously, like the reader here at the end, send it to me. The email address is crazylake@mail.com. Be sure to check the comment section below. We have recently released the next volume, Volume 6 of True Hauntings, real people's experiences with the paranormal, UFOs, alien abductions, abductions, cryptids, supernatural, all things unexplainable. It's a series that's been running for years, and it's stories that's come from real people with those real experiences. Send us yours. Thanks for being here. We appreciate your support. See you for more next time.